Welcome to the Series 11 panel discussion, and today we are talking about the Tsuranga Conundrum. And today I have with me Zach.
Hello.
Rame, I hope I'm pronouncing that right.
Hello. Good enough.
And Class.
Evening, my lady.
Although that's probably pronounced class, but you know, I'm Northern, okay?
Who
Alright,
cares?
so, the 5th episode of Series 11. It's been quite a divisive one if you look on social media, but let's talk about it, going category by category as we usually do. So we'll start with Jodie Whittaker as the Doctor in this episode. Want to see your thoughts, because obviously none of you have been on the panel discussion yet, and what you thought she was like in this episode. So you can start, Zach.
Okay. Well, to pretty much sum it up, she was one of the better things in the episode. But then again, that's usually a given with Doctor's performances in fairly mediocre episodes. Like there are plenty of episodes of series. I mean, I don't like Series 7 that much, but I can always applaud Matt Smith's performance in a lot of them. And the same goes for Jodie here. She is still as good as she ever was, though it kind of feels like the performance is getting a little samey at this point. It's the same. I'm the Doctor, and I'm the Doctor. I'm funny, and I'm quirky, and I'm doing things. But to sum it up, Jodie was good, but it was kind of standard.
Yeah, here's hoping that she can bring a little more to the role once she starts to get some, more developed scripts. As I feel as though that she's starting to stagnate a little bit I don't think that's necessarily her fault. It's just the fact that, other than Rosa, she hasn't really had a standout story at all. They've all been pretty half-baked and undeveloped in various aspects. It's not necessarily bad. I
think she's had a few good standout moments, but they in my opinion, they mainly came from. It was mainly her introduction scene in the first episode and the confrontation with Tim Shaw, excluding Rosa. Other than that, she hasn't really had many standout moments.
Yeah, she needs good stories to really get that good material, so she can really show what her Doctor's about. So
I really like her Doctor.
A different episode. Yeah, okay. I'm still not 100% sold on it, although I have been enjoying it quite a bit. However, here I'm starting to get a little bit of a feel of stagnation. But, this happens in the middle of every series. There's always like a kind of a dud, a filler, whatever. So, Class, what were your thoughts on Jodie as Doctor?
Well, so far she hasn't really done anything to, make a proper impression. She doesn't really show personality. She's just quirky, and that's all we know about her. That's not interesting or anything. So I think she just needs a proper two-parter or something, with a proper villain in it that really is threatening to really bring out
I think I've sensed a bit of more personality than just she's a bit quirky. I mean, sure she hasn't been quite properly developed yet, but I like her, how confrontational she is, how she's just willing to stand up there. And be sure of herself, but not dive into the kind of pretentious speeches that we've got with the past couple of Doctors. I've been quite enjoying that. It's a more humble Doctor, yet more kind of self-confident
Doctor, and I save people. I've come here. I'm talking about something that doesn't even mean anything, but it sounds important.
God,
because
does anybody remember the beginning of The Pyramid of the End of the World, where it's just Peter Capaldi playing a guitar, talking about the meaning of life, and it's just why is this here? It has no relevance.
His regeneration speech was shit. I mean, that's probably got to be the longest regeneration speech.
And the worst, for sure. I mean, the children?
I actually, at this point, prefer Tennant's I Don't Want to Go just because it was short.
Yeah, at least it was over quickly. It's like when you rather get shot or get hung.
Exactly.
Even so,
I mean, if you think about
Tennant's regeneration moment was a bit. Yes, it was shorter than this. However, let's not forget that they dragged that whole episode out for 30
true.
before we got to it.
Anyway, let's not get bogged down in all of that. There'll be plenty of time.
Right. Back to the episode.
We already have 30 minutes of me and Shay ranting about the end of time on this channel, so...
okay, let's get back to it.
Yeah, let's get back to Rame, would you like to talk about Jodie in this episode?
Yeah, I liked her. I think, yeah, I would agree. It's probably a little bit mediocre by this point. But having said that, though, I mean, she does strike me as being the Doctor. I think she's got all that quirkiness, and I like her. And yeah, I don't think she's had a real standout moment yet. But then on the other hand, it's like only the 5th episode in, so I'm willing to give her a little bit grace period. I think the best part of this episode I liked was her initial shock face when the sonic screwdriver got destroyed. I was kind of hoping that would actually be the end of the Sonic. That wouldn't just come back. Like,
okay, I will admit that scene got a laugh from me.
Yeah, there's look on her face, and I thought, perfect. This is a way to write out the Sonic, and then you have to shit on it later.
No, it was never going to happen. I know I was hoping for it, but deep down I knew they're not going to get rid of it. It sells too many toys.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was recently in a Fifth Doctor Big Finish story I was listening to earlier today. They even joked about they pretty much lampshaded that whole thing, hinting that they pretty much lampshaded. Oh, why haven't I got myself a new sonic screwdriver yet? And they were pretty much that was pretty much them saying nope, they're not going to do it again.
I mean, I'm surprised that they didn't introduce an entirely new sonic screwdriver to just sell more toys.
Yeah. All right. So
I think the latest one looks a little bit crude, if you ask me.
It looks like a dildo.
Yeah.
All right. So I think we're gonna move on now to next segment, which is talking about the companions. So do you want to start, class?
I mean, they're all quite boring, aren't they?
No.
It's kind of. I mean, Graham is fun.
I like Graham, I like Ryan, but Yaz is boring. I'll give you Yaz.
Yaz is boring,
she still hasn't developed at all.
I feel like the problem with Ryan and Yaz is that we're just being told their development rather than shown it.
What I'll say about that is I feel the development has been really well handled up until this episode. I felt the development in this particular episode was really ham-fisted. Like, the plot just stops in its tracks for them to have like a 3-minute discussion about I'm changed as a character because of all these factors. It's like, in the last few episodes it's just been kind of, a few lines dispersed about the episode about, their state of mind changing and things that are happening. It's been very well woven into the story, whereas here it just stops the plot in its tracks to do this. And not only that, they spend lots of time on this pregnant man subplot, which is a really ham-fisted link-in to the character development to do with like Ryan's dad and Ryan's dad not being there for him, things like that.
Also just done.
It's so ham-fisted.
I don't want to be a dad. My dad walked out on me. I'm gonna go talk about how my dad walked out on me. Sure, okay. All right.
That's it in a nutshell. They just spend so much time on it, and it can be summed up like that. And it's just the fact they spend so much time on it. I can cope with like some ham-fisted kind of metaphor or linking like that, but the fact that they spend a good chunk of the episode on that subplot just for that reason, it's just that's not how you handle character development, and it's a shame because it's been handled so well up until now.
Yeah, I'm still.
The problem is that there's too many characters. They have 4 characters, and they need to introduce all of them. And they're not introduced over the course of the series. They were all introduced at the same. So they all have A, the same background story, and B, they're just not very interesting.
No, I disagree with that. I think that Graham and Ryan have been developed really well. It's just them being developed really well has been done at the expense of Yaz, who
closest we've got with Yaz is I don't know, how should I put this? Let's say girl talk between her and the Doctor, and a little mention of her career as a police officer.
Girl talk? When was this?
Just generally, because in this episode I feel the Doctor was the character she had the most interaction with.
Yeah, but she didn't really do anything particularly advanced her character at all. I still don't know what her character attributes are other than I am a police woman.
That pretty much sums. That's pretty much it.
The series so far, but with just 13 and Graham. That would have been
better. Or even just Graham and Ryan. That would have been really good.
They are the best character. They're the best characters of this TARDIS team. Graham more than Ryan, but
to put on
I like that Graham is
tinfoil. To put on our tinfoil hats for a second. Do you reckon that Chibnall just wrote it with Graham and Ryan, but the BBC perhaps told him he needed to have a young female companion, so he had to write one in quickly? Perhaps. I mean, maybe that, I mean, I'm not saying that's true at all. I'm just saying maybe that might possibly be it, but probably not.
Replace
just an idea.
Ryan with a female.
That's true, actually. Yeah. Okay. Disproven.
What I like though with Graham is that it's almost like it's nice to have a bit of an older companion too. So it's not just the stereotypical young, nice-looking girl.
You have no idea how long I've been looking forward to an older companion. I love older companions.
Yeah, like Wilf was great. As much as the End of Time shit.
Wilf was from Big Finish.
Dr. Evelyn Smythe, enough said.
Yeah, exactly.
But we had Nardole last series.
He was barely in it.
Yeah, he was like the sidekick.
He was basically a cardboard cutout. They could have just.
Yeah, exactly.
I think he was only meant to be in that Christmas special, but they just kept him on.
No. The story behind
that
Matt Lucas actually called up Stephen Moffat and said, "Can I be in Doctor Who again?" And Moffat was like, "Sure, have a whole series."
All right.
At least apparently that's heard how it went, you know. But yeah. So, any final thoughts on the companions before we move on?
Okay. Not really. I think we've pretty much said all that needs to be said here.
Do you guys think that next week will develop Yaz?
I hope so. I really hope so.
I thought Arachnids in the UK was going to do that, but I was sorely disappointed.
I bet we're going to go through the whole series, and then at the very end, the very last episode, when she's about to depart from the TARDIS, we'll get some like big major plot reveal about her past or something, some real character development, just at the last moment.
I think that the series finale will probably be like the Stenza returning, and then like Graham will be killed, and then Brian will be like, "Oh, you killed Graham too," and then he's going to kill the Stenza.
Or they'll go pull a final problem and reveal that they had a hidden sibling that no one knew about, and thus we have this whole out of nowhere plot.
And then they go into a secret bunker.
Okay, no, that just sounds like Moffat wrote it. That's basically the finale for sure.
Well, then again, he also wrote the finale of Tortured Series 2, and in a way, that episode ripped off that with Grey. I mean, Grey was different. I mean, Grey was set up earlier in the series, but he just came out of nowhere, and he did kind of come out of nowhere at the end. And we're expected to take him seriously despite not really giving him much development.
All right, so we're going to move on now for time.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about the side characters in this story. So would you like to start, Remy?
Well, where to start? I mean, the pregnant man was... I've
already said my piece on that. I won't repeat it.
But what I will say, though, about the monster, I can't even remember
we're going to go on to that in the next segment. We're going to talk about that with plot.
Okay, anyways. So I guess the only real thing left is the general and the android, and they both just seemed really bland to me.
No, there was the hot guy that died.
Oh, yeah, there was that guy, too. I even forgot about him. Like, that's how little the episode...
I actually liked that guy who died.
Me too.
In the few minutes he was on screen, he was actually a really good character. And then he went away. I was like, yeah, this series has shown that it has balls. Now, where's the other good characters? Nowhere.
I barely even remember the side characters.
You're all just really generic. Yeah, just kind of as a little side point.
Except for that guy.
It's funny how the male characters have all the personality.
Yeah. Just as a little side note here, we'll go back to what we were saying just in a moment. Have you noticed how boring the clothes are of people in this future? In a lot of New Who stories, actually, but just specifically this one. They don't look like they're from the future with the clothes they're wearing. He's literally just wearing jeans and a shirt.
Yeah. You could say... That on that note as well, I'd like to say the whole setting of this episode aesthetics-wise reminded me of, let's say, the Apple version of Ark in Space. If Ark in Space was done by Steve Jobs.
Fuck's sake.
Elon Musk again.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny, though, because aesthetic-wise, I mean, when the episode opened, we got that really cool shot of the planet, and I was thinking to myself, wow, visually, this is going to be, like, a great episode. And then the whole rest of the thing was just on a bland space station.
We'll get into production later. That's a different category.
But I would have liked the whole, like, them on Because when the episode started and it like had a monster and we didn't know what it was and they were on this spaceship, I was like, oh, this is gonna be like a cool base on the siege story.
That's what I thought as well. But
and none of that came true.
We'll get onto that in plot. We just focus on the side characters here, unless you're ready to move on, because they were very unremarkable, very generic and bland.
Yeah, they were
I think we should move on.
Yeah, all right, we'll just move on to
They haven't
plot
left an
then.
impression.
Yeah, we'll move on to the plot then. So, so, I mean, you can just continue what you were talking about, class, then.
Well, I mean, the monster just didn't show up until... I thought he had, like, 2 scenes in it that mattered. Like, he appeared the first time when we didn't see him, and we saw him for the first time, and then he died. That's
I think what really highlighted the problem with the writing, which is something that you sort of went across there, is the fact that you thought it was going to be like a kind of base under siege horror story. It was almost like they were writing Alien, but then had the fucking adipose as the alien. It's just so tonally out of sync with each other.
But I wouldn't even have mattered if it looked like the adipose. It just had to be some kind of threat. And it just wasn't scary or anything.
Yeah, it's like...
from the Candleman's kitchen! Gilbert!
I think the problem is that the episode started off really good, and maybe Chibnall had this great idea in mind, and then, I don't know, he worked too late one night or something, and he just fell asleep on his keyboard, and then...
Yeah, no, it did start off really good, and I thought, we're going to get a proper base under siege story. And then they bring out the bloody Pating or Poontang or whatever it was. And it's literally, it's a really cynical design, I think, because all it's there to do is to sell toys to people who will buy anything that looks cute. It's not there to enhance the story in any way. The story would have been far better had they actually had a horror base under siege villain. Because that seemed what the episode was going towards. That would have made better Doctor Who. Whereas it added nothing to the plot, making it a cutesy thing, because it would still treat it as a danger. So it's literally just made to sell toys. It's shit. It's stupid.
Yeah. There's a reason the Daleks are the most well-known monster. It's because they're actually threatening and scary.
If you try and go for that weird cutesy design, you have to have something to back it up. And I know I was making fun of the Candyman earlier, but that's still a point to bring there. People mock design all you want, but he still had this morbid, creepy, threatening presence.
The point of the Candyman is it was like kind of a contradiction. Like it was this, all kiddie sweeties, but it was really fucking horrible and evil through the deeds and what it said.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe they're trying to do a thing like that here, but
no, they weren't. They were just cynically trying to sell toys to people who will buy things that look cute. That's all they were trying to do.
This monster
the monster was barely in it. It was barely in it.
Do you think the monster will come back? Considering that woman was like,
something. I pretty much forgot the monster once I watched the episode. I only remembered it when we brought it up here.
Yeah, no, I really hope we never have to see it again.
I like the concept of it, though. Like, I do have to say, like, this little thing running through the ship, eating everything it comes into contact with. I mean, the idea itself is pretty standard for a monster, and it's solid.
It's just they chose the money option rather than actually making a good Doctor Who story option was the problem. But it could have been a good story if A, they hadn't just went with a cutie route, B, just cut or severely diminish the pregnant man subplot, and C, pace the episode better, as the pacing in this story was terrible. It was just jump start, tension, stop, start, it was all over the place. It was really scattershot, and I just felt like I could never really get into it because it was just constantly changing gears. Like, right, we're getting slow character development scene that takes forever. All right, now tension's building up again. Now it's a funny moment. It's like, it's not working, guys.
They should have, kind of taken away one part of the spaceship, kind of one by one throughout the episode, that they're kind of, forced to think within one chamber.
Great.
And then, oh no, the pregnant man has the baby, and now the pregnant man dies, and now they have this baby to protect.
Yeah, that sounds really good.
But no, instead it has to be the pregnant... Oh, I'm pregnant. I don't want to be a dad. How can you not want to be a dad? My dad left me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think this is really a sign that a showrunner shouldn't write this much of a series. Because Chibnall's first episode was pretty good. His second episode was pretty good. Then Rosa, which was written by Mallory Blackman pretty much, and that was brilliant.
Yeah.
Or at least great. And then Arachnids the UK, big step down but not bad. And then this one's kind of a step down from that. I think there's clear burnout here. And
he's just overworked.
None of these stories have even been that good. They've all been very standard. If Chibnall should focus on writing maybe a couple of episodes, and then maybe you can make those really good.
Here's something else as well. Chibnall did say that like Broadchurch, this series was going to have a writer's room. When he announced that, at first I was welcoming it, but now not so much because, like you said,
it just had the impact of making everything bland and not being developed properly enough and not having enough effort put into each script. Because the only two scripts I felt have had lots of effort put into them is the opener and Rosa so far. I'm really hoping that the next few episodes, which aren't written by Chibnall, can really give Jodie some great moments, give us some great episodes, because we need them.
Next episode is a historical, isn't it?
Yeah.
I hope that it's a historical in India on the verge of independence.
Yeah.
And there's also one coming up with James I, if I'm not mistaken. And I really hope he doesn't screw. Yeah, that one. I really hope he doesn't screw. I really hope those episodes aren't screwed up.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to those because my words, like what I was thinking about Chibnall is, with his original Doctor Who episodes, well, yeah, they're a bit bland, but you know what, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he was just kind of given the shit filler episodes to write. So let's see what he does this series. And he hasn't impressed me. Like, his ability as showrunner has really impressed me. Like, in terms of developing characters, getting it down to earth, getting
He was
Doctor
essentially
Who.
a showrunner. He was essentially one of the showrunners of Torchwood, and when he wrote the big episodes, I mean, Cyberwoman and Day One notwithstanding, when he wrote the big episodes, they actually felt somewhat impactful.
But even Cyberwoman is like a campy, fun mess. It's enjoyable in its messiness.
So Chibnall pretty much is proving to be a great showrunner, but not
I
really
still don't
a great
understand
writer.
why
But
showrunners need to write every series. Just skip a series, gather your thoughts, and let other writers have a go.
Well, maybe that's the problem with Moffat too, that he just wrote too much, and in the end he just got burned out.
I've been saying that for a long time. That's definitely a big part of it.
Yeah.
Because if you look at Moffat's earlier episodes when he wasn't showrunner, I mean, those were some of the most high-regarded ones of Who.
What they need to learn with
and even his early episodes in Series 5, they were really good. But then around Series 6, that was when I felt his ego was becoming way too inflated and all the over-the-top crazy bullshit subplots happening.
What Doctor Who really needs to learn is that it's too much for one man to both run the show and write most of it. There needs to be one man, it needs to be a couple of people who run the show, and maybe they write an episode occasionally, but most of it's handled by other writers, some of them recurring, some of them new. That's how they did it in the classic series, and I think it worked a hell of a lot better, because you were able to focus more on each episode by all these individuals. You didn't get this kind of burnout, you didn't get all of this staleness, and it just... Because Chibnall's great as a showrunner. He's great as a showrunner, but he just hasn't proved to me yet that he's great as a writer. So it's very mixed. But all I will say is, before people call me being too negative, it's a massive improvement on the Moffat era already. And I'm hoping, because I'm excited to see what Series 11 can do next, and hopefully it'll finally get that episode out there, which really is like, wow, that is a brilliant classic. Because I think Rosa just didn't quite reach that for me. And I'm hoping that one of the next 5 episodes can do that.
It was that fucking song that didn't get it for me.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what undercut it for me.
Yeah. But, I have to say, one thing I really like, too, about Series 11 so far is that there's no really silly, forced, overarching story arc for the whole thing.
Well,
sometimes
they did mention that timeless child thing, which I really hope...
It's not forced. It's not in your face every episode of every single moment. I mean, look at the Promised Land arc in Series 8. That was almost in almost every episode? Oh, the Promised Land, the Promised Land. It was like just feeding down your throat.
Me? I'm Missy. I'm a mystery box.
Yeah, no, Yeah, I agree. Although I still think they shouldn't have. If this timeless child thing is actually going to be story arc, I still think they shouldn't have done it. And especially
But
not in the way where you have just random enemy does exposition about the story arc. I hate that trope.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, if they do a story arc like the Timeless Child, I hope they like introduce it and explain it all to a new audience and really make it like a standalone story and not link it back to the episode that I first appeared in.
Yeah.
All right, so
So they just understand that.
just quickly before we move on, is there any other thoughts about the plot, the writing, etc. Before we move on?
Can I just ask, what was the point of that black woman dying?
Just somebody who
what
added the
happened?
body count, I think.
The fields!
Why didn't they just kill her off because of the monster?
Well, they wanted to show her like redeeming herself or something. I don't know. She wasn't really interesting enough for me to care enough to really think about it.
But I mean, it's funny that the black person has to die. I'm just saying.
The black person didn't die first, so it's all right.
Oh, true. There was another guy.
Yeah, no.
The hot one.
It's the first two episodes of Series 9 is where the black guy dies. The pre-title sequence. I don't know if anybody else noticed that, but I noticed it when I first watched it, and I was like, that's kind of amusing. It's probably a complete
Didn't really
coincidence.
pay attention to those tropes.
And then he made up for
those
it next
tropes,
series by having Bill on.
But now that we've noticed it, it's there.
Yeah. Anyway, so we're going to move on just to the production of this, which is like music, direction, sets, etc. So do you want to start, Zach?
Okay. Production. I said earlier that the design of the spaceship reminded me of an Apple version of the Nova spaceship in Arc of Infinity, and no bubble wrap monsters this time. The design itself was fairly unremarkable because I was reminded of typical tropey sci-fi, and this whole hospital kind of design has been done before in other mediums. Though I will say I did like
it's been done in Doctor Who as well. If you remember the girl who waited.
Exactly. But as I was saying,
Oh.
I like the design. I like the design of the junk spaceship that were in at the beginning, and music wise, I do like Segan whatever his name is. I do like his score. It's a massive. Feels really refreshing after the years of Murray Gold,
Yeah.
and he still does a fairly decent job here. I mean, there wasn't really any motifs that really stuck out for me, but it still did good for the
For me, with Segan Akinola, nothing he's really done aside from like a couple of moments have really stood out. But it's just the fact that it really harmoniously weaves into the the filming, the footage. And it just really helps build the atmosphere. I think because with Murray Gold, it was very in your face. It was very distracting for me. Whereas this aids the atmosphere. It weaves itself into the episode. So while there may not be many standout tunes, that's not the point of incidental music in TV.
I mean,
It's
some
meant
people
to
have
be
picked out.
that
Some people have picked out something that's the 13th Doctor's theme. I haven't noticed it, but apparently people have. But
Well, I think that the issue was this episode that the story itself and the way it was filmed, there was nothing really to score because nothing really happened.
That's a good point. Yeah, no,
when in doubt, put time the Doctor on everything.
And also, I think that the set actually did look good. The problem was they just didn't use it. It could have been really claustrophobic and scary, and instead it was just this bright white corridor.
One thing,
And then I don't understand. Oh, sorry.
One thing I am going to say is the first two episodes of this series really, really impressed me in terms of direction. Whereas with the last three episodes, I haven't really felt that. Maybe it's just the nature of these three stories, like with Rosa just being, it's historical, so there's not like amazing alien sights to see. And, Arachnids in the UK, it was, meant to be claustrophobic, that kind of thing. So yeah, that is just a point I thought I'd raise.
But weren't the first two episodes directed by the same person?
Might have been, I'm not sure.
I'm gonna look it up now.
Although to be fair to the Ghost Monument, it really didn't have to try very hard to look beautiful because it's filmed in this luscious South African rural area that just looked gorgeous.
It did. It really impressed me with that.
What I think would have helped with aesthetic-wise in this episode too, if maybe it wasn't so bright, if they had just dimmed the lights, simple trick, but could have made it more claustrophobic looking.
The person who directed The Woman Who Fell to Earth is directing next week's episode as well.
Yeah.
And then episode
Ghost Monument and Rosa were directed by the same guy.
Did Rosa as well.
Well, let's hope that that's going to look nice, because since it's set in India, there's some pretty nice, luscious vistas in India, so hopefully they can get some nice shots there. I mean, I doubt they went to India to film it, but wherever they've obviously had to film somewhere that looked like India, so hopefully it'll look nice. But we'll see, we'll see. Any closing thoughts on the production before we move on?
I mean, I'm just stating, the director of this episode is going to do Kablam as well, so... I don't think it's going to be very interesting.
Okay, I'm not really too sure to say, because the directing itself in this episode, I felt was fairly unremarkable. Save the opening scene. Save the scene where they
to the director of this one.
Save the scene. But I did like the scene where they all regain where the whole TARDIS team regains conscious. I thought that was pretty well done.
Yeah,
but
to be fair to the director, he didn't have much material to work with here.
Yeah.
Like, the person who directed the Ghost one, it was basically just handed on a silver platter, what to direct. Whereas here,
that person,
in a boring
that person did Rosa as well, and that was directed really well.
Yeah.
I'm still just annoyed with this script, because you just mentioned the opening scene where they all, woke up in a hospital. We were just immediately told we're in a hospital. And we were just told we're on a ship instead of having to discover it ourselves.
Yeah, that's the problem with very short stories, which is why I've been a big advocate for either making episodes longer or making episodes two-parters, because you can tell a lot more story, develop everything a lot more, as well as make it, as well as write it better. Because when you're constrained for time, you have to do shortcuts like that with more exposition. So yeah.
But it was more noticeable this episode than the past 4 weeks.
I feel like Arachnids in the UK has been the worst offender of 50-minute syndrome. But this one definitely did struggle with it. It did kind of end a bit abruptly, but not quite as abruptly as Arachnids. Anyway, so we're going to move on to our final thoughts about this story now. So if you'd like to go first, class, and give it a score out of 10 if you would.
Score out of 10. I mean, on first viewing, I thought it was like a 6 out of 10. But having just rewatched it, I'm kind of more like a 4 or a 5.
Yeah.
I just thought it was very kind of bland and boring, and I'm not going to remember it in a week.
Yeah, that's understandable.
I'll give it a 4. I'll give it a 4 out of 10. Thus far, out of all the episodes this season, this has been the most unremarkable.
Remy?
I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10, just to be generous and say that it's early on in the series, and yeah, it could have done a lot worse, let's just say. So I'll say 5 out of 10, but that's being generous.
Before I came on this panel discussion, I think I would have given it a 5 out of 10. But having actually discussed it, I've realised how actually quite poorly written this was. So I'm definitely going to have to go for a 4 out of 10. It wasn't that horrible. It's not really bad, and it's pretty inoffensive, but it's just some of the writing choices are very questionable. It doesn't really know what to do. It has a good idea, and it kind of builds that up well, and then just kind of veers off course with focusing on this, weird pregnant man subplot, which is clearly just, ham-fisted, shoved in there to relate to character development. Yeah. They ruined the alien by just making it a cutie thing rather than, making it a base under siege, and didn't really use the environment they were in to their advantage. Because, like Class was saying, if, it ate bits of the ship to the point where they had to abandon parts of the ship, that could have made it way more interesting, way more tense. But instead, we just kind of get tension, joke, 2 minutes of, characters discussing things to get character development. It really was paced very poorly. The story wasn't well woven together. And it's a shame, really. And I feel like Chibnall was kind of feeling a bit burned out when he wrote this, more or less. So he is hoping that the finale is really where he's put his effort in. And I'm looking forward to the next few episodes. But unfortunately, this is a dud. But it happens every series. And to be fair, as duds go, this is not that bad. Especially,
but I would rather watch something like
I'd rather watch this than Hellbent
Died or something that really infuriates me.
Yeah,
but still have interesting concepts. But at least it makes me feel something. This just is so forgettable.
I can kind of see what you're saying there, but at the same, there's just been so many poor episodes in previous series. I feel like comparatively, this one isn't as horrendous. So I can let it slide as long as, this doesn't get repeated. We'll see. So, thank you all for coming on.
You're very welcome.
It's been a good discussion, and so I'll see you back next time for the Demons of Punjab, which hopefully will be a step up from this episode. Goodbye.
And hopefully Yaz will find you feel like a character.